Elena Wright was 34 years old when her younger sister announced to the entire Thanksgiving table that she was still single. The comment was delivered with a smile that suggested humor, but the timing and volume told a different story. Marissa leaned back in her chair, slowly swirling red wine in her glass, her posture relaxed, confident, and unmistakably prepared for attention. "Still single at 34, she said loudly, letting the words land. "That's brave." The sentence echoed through the dining room. Diane froze mid-motion with the serving spoon hovering over the gravy. Richard's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Even Ethan, Marissa's husband, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. No one spoke. No one corrected her. No one looked at Elena. The silence that followed was heavy, practiced, familiar. Elena felt something inside her crack, not break, but split open with clarity. She had spent years telling herself that moments like this didn't matter, that she was imagining the imbalance, that she was too sensitive. But this was different. This wasn't carelessness. This was deliberate. She placed her fork neatly beside her plate and lifted her eyes to meet Marissa's. Her voice was calm when she spoke. "I wouldn't worry about me," Elena said. "I'm married." The room went completely still. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from today. Your support truly helps this channel grow. Diane's face drained of color. Richard's jaw dropped. Marissa stared, stunned, her confidence faltering for the first time that day. Elena didn't smile. She didn't explain. She simply sat there, letting the truth settle into the space that had never made room for her before. The silence stretched long enough to feel unreal, like the moment after a glass shatters but before the sound registers. Diane's lips parted as if to speak, but nothing came out. Richard looked from Elena to Marissa, confusion etched deeply into his tired face. Ethan leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing, as though reassessing a story he thought he understood. Marissa laughed first, sharp and dismissive. "Married," she said. "That's funny." "To who?" Elena didn't answer immediately. She had learned long ago that defending herself too quickly only invited dismissal. 8 months, Elena said instead, her voice steady. "We got married in April." Diane shook her head slowly. "Sweetheart, if that were true, we would have known," she said, reaching for reassurance rather than facts. Elena met her mother's eyes. "You were invited," she replied. The words landed harder than any accusation. Richard straightened in his chair. "Invited?" he repeated. "We never received anything." Elena nodded. "I know." The weight of 8 months pressed against her chest, but she didn't let it show. She had cried enough in private. She wasn't here to beg for belief. She was here because something inside her had finally stopped accepting erasure as normal. Marissa scoffed, rolling her eyes. "You really expect us to believe you planned a whole wedding without telling anyone," she said. Elena felt the familiar urge to retreat, to soften the moment, to apologize for causing discomfort. She ignored it. "I told you," she said calmly. "You just didn't hear it." The difference now was that she understood why. To understand how they reached that table, in that moment, it helped to look backward. Elena had grown up in the same house, under the same roof, surrounded by the same family photographs. But even as a child, she noticed something she didn't yet have language for. Conversations bent naturally toward Marissa. Praise followed her. Forgiveness arrived easily. When Marissa spoke, Diane's entire face lit up. When Elena did, the reaction was polite, measured, neutral. Richard avoided conflict the way some people avoided storms, by pretending they didn't exist. If tension arose, he went quiet, leaving Diane to manage the narrative. Elena spent years convincing herself this was normal sibling dynamics. She told herself she was imagining patterns that weren't there. But patterns have a way of revealing themselves over time. When Elena graduated college, her parents didn't attend. Marissa had a social event she couldn't miss, and Diane said it was an unfortunate overlap. Elena sat alone in the auditorium, clapping for strangers, telling herself it didn't matter. When she turned 30, she planned a small dinner. Her parents cancelled 2 hours before because Marissa needed help touring wedding venues. Elena ate alone that night, accepting a free dessert from a waiter who felt sorry for her. When Elena bought her condo in Seattle, alone, after years of saving, she sent photos to the family chat. No one asked to visit. No one offered help. 2 years later, When Marissa bought her place with Ethan's family support, Diane and Richard drove 3 hours to help her unpack and posted photos online about family time.
Elena saw them. She stopped commenting. She still kept showing up. Caleb noticed long before Elena did.
He watched her pack for every holiday, folding clothes carefully, choosing gifts thoughtfully, preparing as if approval was something that could be earned through effort. "You don't have to work this hard for people who already have you," he told her once, gently.
Elena laughed it off. Somewhere deep inside, she believed effort was the price of belonging.
They married quietly on a beach in April, surrounded by 20 people who had chosen them consistently.
Caleb's parents cried. His sister gave a toast that made everyone laugh.
Elena waited for her family to respond to the invitations she sent. 5 physical envelopes, emails, texts, calls. She waited through April, then May, then June. When no one asked about the wedding afterward, she told herself they were busy. When they didn't ask why she'd gone quiet, she stopped making excuses. Walking into her parents' house that Thanksgiving, Elena felt the familiar tightness in her chest.
Nothing had changed. The leaning coat rack. The heavy mirror.
The rug Marissa had once ruined with wine and never been scolded for. Diane hugged her with one arm while stirring gravy with the other and immediately began talking about Marissa's honeymoon.
Elena realized then that this wasn't just habit. It was design. And for the first time, she felt ready to stop participating.
Marissa arrived late, as always, her entrance effortless, her presence immediately commanding attention. She greeted Diane and Richard warmly, then glanced at Elena with polite disinterest. At the table, the hierarchy settled into place.
Marissa spoke. Diane listened. Richard stayed quiet. Elena existed in the margins.
But something had shifted. The comments didn't sink the way they used to. When Marissa finally made her remark about Elena being single, it didn't wound, it clarified. The truth Elena shared wasn't an impulsive reveal. It was the natural result of 8 months of grief, processing, and resolve. As the room sat in stunned silence, Elena understood something important. Her family hadn't missed her wedding because of confusion or accident.
They had missed it because someone made a choice.
And for the first time in her life, Elena was prepared to make one too. She looked around the table, at the disbelief, the denial, the discomfort, and felt oddly calm. The moment she had feared for years had arrived, and it had not destroyed her. It had freed her. What came next would be uncomfortable.
It would be painful.
But it would be honest. And honesty, Elena realized, was the one thing this family had never known how to handle. The first person to break the silence was Diane. She leaned forward, her voice careful, almost rehearsed. "Elena, sweetheart, if you were married, we would have known. You would have said something." Elena nodded once.
"I did," she replied.
"More than once." Richard frowned, lines deepening across his forehead. "Then why didn't we get anything?" he asked. Elena didn't accuse.
She didn't raise her voice.
She simply reached into her pocket and placed her phone on the table, screen facing down. The gesture alone shifted the air. Marissa stiffened, fingers tightening around her wine glass.
"What is this?" she asked sharply.
Elena looked at her sister, really looked at her, and recognized the tension beneath the confidence. "Proof," Elena said. She turned the phone over and opened the first file. 5 mailed invitations. 5 delivery confirmations.
All signed for on the same morning in April.
Richard leaned closer, squinting.
"Signed by who?" he asked. Elena enlarged the image.
The signature was unmistakable.
Marissa's. No one spoke.
Even the clock in the hallway seemed to hesitate. Diane's breath caught in her throat.
"Marissa," she whispered. "Do you know anything about this?" Marissa laughed, too fast.
"Anyone can sign for mail," she said.
Elena nodded calmly.
"That's true.
Which is why I called the post office. Twice.
They confirmed it was delivered here. They remembered because the person who answered the door was wearing pajamas." The color drained from Marissa's face. Marissa straightened, her voice rising defensively.
"This is ridiculous," she said.
"You're twisting things."
Elena didn't respond immediately. She opened another file. Email records.
Digital invitations opened from the house's internet address, then deleted less than a minute later. Diane clasped her hands together. "Maybe your father opened them by mistake," she offered weakly.
Richard shook his head.
"I don't even check that account," he said quietly.
The admission landed heavily. Elena swiped again. Call logs.
Dates and times stacked neatly in order.
I called, Elena said. I left messages. I sent reminders. I followed up. Richard's voice wavered.
Why didn't you come here in person?
Elena met his eyes.
Because I shouldn't have to chase my own parents to attend my wedding. The room went still again, but this time the silence felt different, less performative, more exposed.
Marissa scoffed. You wanted attention, she snapped.
That's what this is about.
Elena shook her head. I wanted my family, she said.
There's a difference.
Diane's eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing.
Ethan shifted beside Marissa, his expression no longer neutral.
Doubt had crept in. You're making this into something it's not, Marissa said, her voice sharpening.
If there really was a wedding, it clearly wasn't important.
The words landed like a slap. Elena inhaled slowly. It was important to me, she said.
And you made sure it stayed invisible.
Marissa's composure finally cracked. I was getting married, she shot back. My wedding was in June. Everything was already about me. I wasn't going to let you complicate that.
Diane stared at her daughter in disbelief.
You hid the invitations, she asked. Marissa shrugged, defensive.
I managed the situation. Richard's hands trembled as he placed them flat on the table. You decided for all of us, he asked.
Marissa's voice dropped.
It was supposed to be my year. Elena watched them, not with triumph, but with clarity.
So mine didn't count, she said.
Marissa met her gaze, jaw tight.
No, she said.
The honesty hurt less than the denial would have.
It explained everything Elena had spent years questioning.
The favoritism wasn't accidental.
It was protected.
Diane began to cry softly, the sound restrained but unmistakable.
I didn't know, she said.
Elena looked at her mother with tired compassion.
You didn't ask, she replied. Richard closed his eyes.
When he opened them, his voice was barely audible.
What was his name? He asked.
Your husband.
Caleb, Elena said.
He runs a consulting business.
Richard nodded slowly.
Where did you get married?
On the beach, Elena replied.
In April. Was it beautiful?
Elena hesitated, then answered honestly. Yes. Richard swallowed. I wish I'd been there.
Elena felt the weight of those words, heavy and late. So do I, she said.
She stood, pushing her chair back gently. Diane looked up, alarmed. Where are you going? She asked. Elena picked up her coat.
Home, she said. To the place where I'm seen. Richard rose halfway, reaching out.
Please don't leave like this, he said. Elena paused. I've spent my life staying, she replied.
This time, I'm choosing differently. As Elena walked toward the door, Marissa spoke again, her voice brittle. You ruined Thanksgiving. Elena turned, her expression calm. You ruined my wedding, she said. This is just the truth catching up. She stepped outside into the cold evening air, feeling lighter with every breath. The drive back to Seattle was quiet, uninterrupted, steady. When she walked into the apartment, Caleb didn't ask questions. He wrapped his arms around her, grounding her in a way that required no explanation. It finally happened, she said.
He nodded.
I know. She told him everything, and when she finished, he smiled softly. I'm proud of you, he said.
The words settled deep. They weren't dramatic. They were real.
And for the first time, Elena understood that peace didn't come from being chosen, it came from choosing herself. The days after Thanksgiving were quieter than Elena expected. There was no dramatic fallout, no public confrontation, no frantic attempts to rewrite what had happened. Instead, there was space.
On the third day, Richard called.
His voice sounded careful, stripped of authority and habit.
He didn't argue. He didn't defend Marissa. He listened.
I should have noticed, he said. I should have paid attention.
Elena let the silence sit between them before responding.
Yes, she said. You should have. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was honest. They spoke for 20 minutes about her work, her life in Seattle, the things he'd never asked about before. Before hanging up, he hesitated. Could I meet Caleb? He asked.
Elena paused. Maybe, she said.
Eventually.
It was the first boundary she'd ever set without guilt.
When the call ended, she felt steadier, not relieved, but grounded. Accountability, she realized, didn't erase harm, but it made truth possible.
And truth was something she could finally stand on. Marissa emailed a week later.
The message was long and carefully worded, full of admissions that sounded practiced but not insincere. She acknowledged intercepting the invitations.
She admitted jealousy.
She wrote about always feeling pressure to be the center because attention was the only currency she'd ever known.
She apologized.
Elena read the email once, then again, then closed it without replying. The apology explained Marissa's behavior, but it didn't excuse it. It didn't return the wedding day Elena had imagined with her parents in attendance. It didn't undo decades of being treated as optional. Healing, Elena understood, wasn't something owed on demand. It required time, distance, and change. For now, silence felt healthier than conversation. Diane didn't call.
She didn't write.
And for the first time, that silence didn't feel like punishment.
It felt like confirmation.
Elena stopped waiting for her mother to become someone different. The following Thanksgiving, Elena and Caleb went to his parents' house. There was no tension in the air, no competition for attention. People asked Elena questions and waited for the answers. They laughed easily. Caleb's mother hugged her at the door and asked about the wedding as if it mattered, because it did.
His father asked about her job and listened. It wasn't extravagant or dramatic.
It was simple, warm, and consistent. As Elena sat at the table, passing dishes and sharing stories, something settled quietly inside her. This was what family felt like when love didn't have conditions.
She realized that home wasn't a place she had to fight to belong to. It was where she was welcomed without performance. Christmas came and went peacefully.
Elena and Caleb stayed in Seattle, cooking together, watching movies, letting the season pass without obligation. Richard called on Christmas Eve.
They spoke for an hour. He asked if they could visit in January.
"We'll see," Elena said honestly. She wasn't closing the door, but she wasn't opening it fully either. Trust, she had learned, was built through consistency, not regret. Marissa didn't reach out again.
Elena didn't miss her.
Some relationships ended not with anger, but with clarity. And clarity, she had learned, was a form of freedom. As winter settled in, the ache softened into something manageable. Elena no longer replayed the past searching for answers.
She had them now. She wasn't the forgotten daughter because she lacked value.
She had been overlooked because it was easier for others that way. Letting go of that burden felt lighter than any apology could have. Elena had chosen her peace, her marriage, her future. And for the first time, she wasn't waiting to be seen.
She already was.
January arrived with steady rain and low gray skies, and with it came Richard's visit. Elena agreed to meet him alone at a quiet cafe near her apartment. When he arrived, he looked smaller than she remembered, his coat damp, his posture uncertain. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, settling into the chair across from her.
Elena nodded.
"I wanted to see if this conversation would feel different," she replied.
He folded his hands together.
"I keep thinking about everything I missed," he said.
"Not just the wedding.
The years before it." Elena stirred her coffee slowly. "Missing things once is a mistake," she said. "Missing them repeatedly becomes a choice."
Richard did not argue.
"You are right," he said. "I told myself it was easier to stay quiet than to challenge the way things were."
Elena looked at him steadily.
"Easier for you," she said. "Not for me."
He exhaled, nodding. "I know," he said.
"I am not asking you to forgive me today."
That honesty mattered. "Then what are you asking?" she said.
"A chance to do better," he replied.
Elena considered him carefully.
"Doing better means listening without defending," she said. "And accepting that some damage cannot be undone." Richard met her gaze.
"I accept that," he said.
When they stood to leave, there was no hug. Instead, there was something new and fragile. Respect. Weeks later, Diane called. Her voice was tentative, stripped of its usual authority. "I do not know how to start this," she said.
Elena answered calmly.
"You can start by telling the truth." Diane was quiet for a moment.
"I favored Marissa," she admitted.
"I told myself it was because she needed me more, but the truth is that it was easier to give her attention than to question why you did not ask for it." Elena closed her eyes briefly.
"I did ask," she said.
"I just stopped when it became clear that it did not matter." Diane's voice trembled.
"I am sorry," she said.
"I failed you." Elena did not rush to comfort her.
"Acknowledging it is a beginning," she replied.
"But change is what makes it real."
Diane agreed.
"I understand if you need distance,"
she said.
I do not expect closeness right away.
Elena appreciated that restraint. We will move at a pace that feels safe, she said. When the call ended, Elena felt no relief, but she felt something steadier. The truth had been spoken without manipulation. That alone marked progress. Spring returned slowly, bringing light back into the evenings. Elena and Caleb hosted friends for dinner, laughter filling the apartment. During a quiet moment, Caleb asked, "Do you regret telling them the truth?" Elena considered the question.
"No," she said.
"I regret how long I believed silence was kindness."
He nodded.
"You changed the pattern," he said. "That takes courage."
Elena smiled faintly.
"It took exhaustion," she replied. Courage came later. One evening, Richard and Diane visited together. The conversation was careful but sincere. "We are not here to pretend nothing happened," Richard said. "We are here to listen." Elena appreciated the clarity. When Diane asked about the wedding, Elena described it fully, without minimizing its importance. They listened. They asked questions. They did not interrupt. It was not reconciliation, but it was accountability. Marissa never came. She sent one final message months later, asking for a conversation. Elena replied simply, "Not now." The decision brought no guilt. She had learned that access was earned through consistent behavior, not shared history. One afternoon, Elena walked along the beach where she had married Caleb. The wind was strong, the waves steady. She remembered standing there, holding his hands, choosing a life built on presence rather than approval. That choice had reshaped everything. She no longer defined herself by what her family withheld. She defined herself by what she protected. At 35, Elena understood something she had spent decades searching for. Family was not proven through obligation or endurance. It was proven through care, attention, and accountability. She had not lost her family that Thanksgiving. She had found herself. As she returned home to Caleb, laughter and warmth waiting inside, she felt no need to look back. The truth had been spoken. The boundaries had been set. And for the first time, Elena was not invisible. She was free. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Elena did the right thing, or would you have handled it differently? Sometimes the family we choose sees us more clearly than the one we are born into.